There are no moms in One Piece, and that's a great thing. Like, with mothers, One Piece just doesn't work, as crazy as it may sound. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but Crocodile might actually be Luffy's mother, because I found a lot of new evidence for the Crocoman theory. But that being said, I also found a number of other very possible candidates, and I'll show you just how important Luffy meeting his mother will be for the entire story.
父ちゃん？父ちゃんってなんだよ？俺に父ちゃんなんかいんのか？
I really can't explain it, but Luffy's mom is one of those mysteries in One Piece that, even though they don't seem to matter, like, at all for the story right now, I just can't help but obsess a little bit about. I mean, there's something really weird going on with mothers in One Piece in general, and I absolutely refuse to believe that we won't get to know the mother of the Pirate King himself. What's up? My name is Manu, and just like you assume, my mom means the world to me. Of course, there are exceptions to this, but generally, I think moms score pretty high on the things people tend to love no matter what list. And so today, I finally have the chance to talk about something that has bothered me for a while now. You know how shonen characters all seem to have pretty bad I have no dad syndrome? Well, One Piece takes this a whole step further. Here, everyone seems to suffer from, wait, I don't even get a mom syndrome as well. And as it turns out, there's actually a reason for this that I think is important to discuss before we get into Luffy's mom specifically. Okay, how do I put this? There are no mothers in One Piece. That's a weirder sentence to say out loud than I originally thought it would be. But it is an undeniable fact. None of the Straw Hats has a mother as of right now. Luffy, Zoro, and Jinbei have never mentioned their parents. Frankie and Chopper got abandoned by theirs. Brook's parents must be dead because he's a grandpa. And Robin, Usopp, Sanji, and Nami have all lost their mothers under the most tragic circumstances.
こうしたかった。
And what I just realized is that those four share incredibly similar arcs as well. All their mothers were incredibly kind and brave people that then inherited that kindness to their children.
こんな小さな子が書いたなんて誰も思わないよ。
All of them then had the most terrible and lonely childhoods after they lost their mothers, suffering under a terrible lack of self-confidence. And all four of them were the ones that opposed Luffy and the crew out of that sense that they were not worth anything and, in the end, under tears, accepted Luffy's unconditional love for them. 行きたい！私も一緒に海へ連れてって！ごめん！俺は最後に帰りたい！ And now that I think about it, you can actually spin that in the other direction as well. Chopper and Frankie are the most quirky members of the crew, the non-normals if you want, not because they are a cyborg and a reindeer, but because they were abandoned, only now fitting in with a crew that actually loves and accepts them. And lastly, the four members that don't seem to have a tragic backstory with their moms, at least yet, are the four emotionally most stable ones. Luffy, Zoro, Brook, and Jinbei, I feel, share that aura of stability and groundedness. 続けようか、バロックアクセ。喧嘩はシャレじゃねえんだぜ。Now, Zoro does clearly have some issues of his own that probably relate to growing up without parents and always fighting ever since he was a kid. I hope we'll get to meet his parents soon, actually. Jinbei's darkness stems more from the discrimination of his people as a whole, and Brooks is spending such a long time alone. But I find it beyond interesting that there seems to be a clear pattern connected to mothers in the story. And so it was really no big surprise to find out that this lack of motherly care was not an accident, but something consciously decided by author Eiichiro Oda. As he explained in an SBS, mothers for him are the opposite of adventure. They take care of their children and protect them from going on a journey that might well cost them their lives. And so the idea is simply that you can't have a great pirate adventure with loving mothers around. Now, this statement may sound very trivial, but when you stop and think about what we just discussed about the Straw Hats, Oda took great care to include the negative implications of not having a mom into consideration. All the most tragic backstories in the story are related to either losing a mom or being abandoned by one.
伝説の薬があるんだ。そうだ、病気でも治しちゃう。バカだね。
And as a result, bringing out either the best or the worst in people. For example, Luffy and Corazon, and you can really see it with everyone. Ace, Sabo, Law. Oda knows that mothers are important, but was smart enough to keep them out of his adventure story, which will be actually really important later when we will look at the possible candidates for Luffy's mom. And honestly, whether or not he was aware of all the fantastic effects that this decision would have as a 20-year-old, I think this decision has contributed immensely to why One Piece works so well as a story. Just think about it for a second. Well, at first glance it might be really easy to go fully woke and say, oh, Oda doesn't like women. The truth is, loving mothers are something extremely treasured and rare in this world. If you have a loving mom, you have won the ultimate jackpot. You can live a happy life away from violence and hate. And so the fact that there literally are no loving moms in One Piece motivates the entire story. Seriously. All the characters now have motivation and reason to become pirates. They all have the potential to be saved by Luffy because he is the one that gives them unconditional love that they're supposed to get from their mothers. As a result, crews like Luffy's or Whitebeard's are the real loving families in One Piece because there are no regular loving ones.
おめえたちには全てをもらった。感謝している。Salute me, familia.
It's why brotherly bonds like that of Luffy, Sabo, and Ace, or that of Noriko and Nami, are more common than having actual siblings. And it's also the reason why crews like Doflamingos exist, where really kind characters like Baby Five tried to find some twisted sense of love and belonging.
私は必要とされたのに答えられなかった。
And then of course there is Big Mom's crew, who is a pure caricature and dark twist on the entire concept of a loving mother. A woman so overly obsessed with creating a big family for everyone in the world and so scarred by being abandoned by Mother Caramel that she ironically lost sight of her actual children, just using them as tools.
我が子ながら君が悪いね。
Just as Oda says, real loving moms are the opposite of adventure and pirates. And yeah, Big Mom isn't a real loving mom. But I think it goes even further than that. The fact that there are no mothers in One Piece and all the tragedy that comes with it is, in a way, the biggest reason why this world is broken and needs fixing so badly. A world in which pirate crews, revolutionary armies, and marines are the only family people can have, many of them emotionally scarred, is a world that needs to change fundamentally. I strongly believe that the dawn Luffy needs to bring has to shine on a world where kids can grow up in the arms of their mothers, not having to fight. Wow, I really went a little bit deep on this one, huh? But I really love how deep One Piece always turns out to be when you dig just a little bit beneath the surface. Before we get into Luffy and his mom now, if you're enjoying these type of deep dives and some good theories on top, I'd really appreciate it immensely if you considered subscribing to this channel for more weekly wanted content just like this. Okay, so Luffy's mom. It's difficult to talk about who and where she might be because Luffy does already have a stepmom of sorts, if you know what I mean.
強くなったな、あいつ。
𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚢 is pretty much Luffy's loving mother figure that, while tough, raised him in a more or less caring home. And Luffy does love 𝙲𝚘𝚙 back like a son, even if he doesn't see her as a literal mom. In a way, you could even argue that Luffy might be so incredibly special in this world because he grew up with a loving, if violent, family of bandits, his two brothers, and Garp. So why do I think that after all that, Luffy even needs a mom and that we will definitely meet her in the story? Well, some of it comes from Oda the man himself, in very tiny bites and bits as always. It was he himself that told us that Luffy's mom is still alive and that he has already drawn her. But on top of that, we just discussed that Oda actually thinks so highly of motherly characters and their influence that he consciously decided to keep her away from Luffy. He described that as Luffy starting his adventure the moment he left his parents' arms. What I personally think Oda is hinting at with this is that we will only meet Luffy's mother at the end of the story. Actually, no. We will already find out sooner than Luffy, but Luffy himself will only meet his mother towards the end, when his adventure is over. I've talked about this before, but I like to think that Luffy's adventure ends with finding the One Piece and that the big war that must follow after is, in a way, a separate or new story. So to me, it would make absolute sense if he met his mom after reaching Laugh Tale, but before the final big war or showdown, whatever it'll be. I know people for some reason really hate the idea of the Straw Hats being special or Luffy being the chosen one because I guess they feel like it would undermine his achievements. And I have bad and good news for you, because Luffy is definitely the chosen one, but that doesn't take away anything from all that he has already accomplished.
革命家ドラゴンの実の息子だ。
あの革命家ドラゴンの
世界最悪の犯罪者の子供。
Luffy's choices and all he has worked for matters. It's just that being born special gave him the chance to reach his full potential in the first place. But nonetheless, it was still up to Luffy to live up to that potential. And the same goes for characters like Sanji or Zoro, who we now know also come from unique and special circumstances. But because they have all worked really hard and sacrificed a lot to reach the level that they're at right now, I think it doesn't take away at all from all their achievements.
三刀流竜巻
My point here is that Luffy, the grandson of the strongest marine and the son of the leader of the revolutionary army, definitely will have a special mother. No question about it. The only question we now have to answer, and boy, it's a big one, is who? Who is Luffy's mom? So I now want to run through all the possible candidates we have so far. And let me warn you, you might be surprised about the last character I propose here. Now, one of the most popular theories out there is the forbidden love theory.
東の海に思う家族でもあるの？どう？
通常の詮索はよせ。
In case you don't know it, the idea here is that Dragon met a celestial dragon, and after spending more and more time together, a romance began to bloom. This would be a classic bird in the golden cage scenario where the woman yearns for the same sort of freedom that Dragon enjoys, and at some point they have a little baby together. And so as the other celestial dragons find out, she is ultimately killed for mixing royal blood with that of a commoner. This and all the other knowledge about the rulers of the world he has now gathered is what motivates Dragon to form the revolutionary army. He hands off Luffy to Garp and dedicates his life to taking down the world nobles. I personally think this theory is pretty reasonable and straightforward. It's a classic forbidden love, Romeo and Juliet sort of approach that would motivate Dragon, but also give Luffy some unique background that might be important towards the end of the story. doesn't exactly blow me away, but it's solid enough. Another really interesting candidate is Bello Betty, one of the commanders of the Revolutionary Army.
己の運命を選べ。ヒーローは人事か。
Betty is the commander of the East Blue, which is exactly where Luffy grew up, and her abilities to boost up people's will and rally them to her cause is something she shares with our hero as well. On top of that, since Oda mentioned that he would draw Luffy's parents in volume 45, people have been speculating that this woman right here might be Luffy's mom. And so that might just be an early version of Betty for all we know. Now this theory does something that all the other theories can't do, which is bringing Dragon and his partner actually close together and have them work towards a common goal. It also fits in with Oda telling us that she's still alive, and I would actually enjoy this one a lot. Betty is no regular character, but also not someone super overly famous and mysterious. Just someone fighting the government alongside Dragon. Pretty decent, I'd say. A very short theory is that Luffy's mom was actually Gold Roger's sister. This idea is based on the fact that D's seem to have kids with other D's.
母親の名はポートガス・ディ・ルージュ
That goes for Ace, the only person we actually know both parents of, but Jaguar D. Sol also mentioned that everyone in his family was a D. So if it takes 2 Ds to make the one who can bring the dawn, Luffy's mother would also have to be one. This could of course be true if she was actually Garp's daughter, but if not, what better family for Luffy to have blood from than the Gold family? I actually do really like this idea, even if it's a bit out there, because it would bring Luffy closer to both Roger and Ace, but it also begs the question, why no one ever mentioned Roger's sister before? Now, however, it's time for one of my favorite candidates here, and that is Jewelry Bonnie. She's actually a really interesting character no matter what, unrelated to all this here. Because Bonnie's devil fruit allows her to change her age and presumably that of others, we have no idea who she really might be. Her biggest character trait is her gluttony that mirrors Luffy's own appetite like no other character. Plus, her face does look quite a lot like Luffy's. Bonnie saved Zoro from attacking a celestial dragon, even though she could have easily not cared about the Marines coming and simply disguised herself as a kid or old woman. But we also know that Bonnie has some ties to the Revolutionary Army and Dragon through Kuma, as we saw during the Reverie.
絶対に
Kuma, who somehow knew about Luffy being Dragon's son even before Ivankov knew. And it might be easy to think that she just snuck into the Holy Land separately from the revolutionaries, but since she's there to save Kuma, wouldn't it make way more sense for her to have come with them? Then there was also this weird situation with Blackbeard and Akainu, and on top of that, Bonnie is inspired by the most famous female pirate in history, Anne Bonny, who escaped her execution and was reportedly pregnant at the time of her escape. Plus, we have of course the legendary reference to Bonnie and Clyde, which would fit pretty damn well with her and Dragon. Now, as promised, I'm gonna share my thoughts and new insights on the Crocomom theory with you as well. However, since this video, as you can see, is already long enough as it is, Crocomon will get its own entire special video that will be released 3 days from now, or if you're from the future, it's already here. Until then, I strongly recommend you check out my video on Luffy's father, Dragon, as well. Is it here or not? Is it? It might be invisible. You might, maybe it's, or maybe it's already.